reactions to it from the beginning of everything. And probably it was not time to talk about some of those. And when there is some negativity surrounding one thing or another, I just let it loose, because I always know that there will come a day that it will be most appropriate and ideal to talk about some of those. And today is probably the most appropriate time, you know, and of course the appropriate day to bring some of those things into perspective. So to draw you a little back, Ousanou Bojang is somebody I know, grew up with in the same community, went to school with, and of course quite a close associate. You know, as a kid growing up in the same community, people would grow up and go into their different fields and respectively and do whatever they got to do. But they will never lose sight of the fact that you grow up together, you're homies from the hood, and of course you will always defend nothing but the truth when injustice is meted against one of us. So what the government of the Gambia did, specifically on today's testimony, and before we get into that, I think it's important that we commend and of course thank Kathleen, who actually owned, you know, where Ousanou Bojang works, and have known this young man for over 15 years since 2010. And she did everything she could humanly possible. And even though the court had even granted, you know, her the permission to testify virtually, she decided to fly into the country, stay there for a couple of days. That just a few of us were very much opportune to those conversations, because we've had forth and back and conversations, making sure that everything goes as planned. And, you know, we decided to just loosen up on the case as if nothing was happening. She flew into the country, presented herself in court today, with all the messages she exchanged with Ousanou Bojang on the day of the incident. The government told us that this incident happened between 8 p.m. to midnight. Between 8 p.m. to 9:10 was when the shooting happened. Now, in court today, Kathleen has presented messages, constant messages, with Ousanou Bojang from 8 p.m. of that same night until 8 p.m. all the way to midnight. Now, that is just one thing about it. Somebody who is killing the cops at the same time, constantly on the phone, chatting on WhatsApp, sending voice messages constantly from 8 p.m. to midnight, and it was within the same time period that police were killed. How is that possible? Now, that only concludes to one thing, that is to verify the reason why the police actually formatted his phone. So the police formatted Ousanou Bojang's phone because they did not want those messages to come out. And these messages were what were presented today in court. Even though the DPP Yusuf deliberately have ignored or actually left himself out of the case, they decided to bring, you know, either Wakawa or whatever you pronounce his name. And this Wakawa, we will go into him as well to understand how the Gambia continues to recruit the most incompetent lawyers from across the region, and of course give them big titles. Imagine this guy is a principal prosecutor with almost zero experience in processes that have to do with courts here and there. This is just one person who was yesterday teaching in a flimsy university somewhere in Nigeria, claims to be a PhD student, but of course came to the Gambia and of course is a principal, prosecutor. When our own Gambian brothers with relevant experience, education and expertise will never be given those positions. Gambia ñun la lañ gom. Gambian bi dinga janga be de am ham babuga de, on top of it you have the experience, all the prerequisite experience, they will not give you the job. You know why? Because you might work in the best interest of the nation, but they will always bring in some of these riffraffs from nowhere, give them big position so that they can do what the regime wants. And that is how Wakawa and other people get their jobs, because this guy is not on secondment from the Federal Ministry of Nigeria, because that is where we know that Nigerians are often sent on secondment to the Gambia. This guy, I don't know however they actually got him, but it's not one of those. So therefore he must be one of the people that they just handpicked from somewhere in the streets somewhere and then brought them over to actually be doing injustice towards the Gambia. If DPP cannot handle the case, who is Wakawa to think he can handle it? And that is why he was shamed in court today, that you want to tell a British how to speak English, when in reality you have very little understanding of the language. And that was why he was put to shame today. You cannot use vocabulary trying to actually deceive people who have clear understanding of what they are talking about, born and raised native speakers. But here, that's not even my point. My point is, why did the regime format Ousanou Bojang's phone? That was the purpose of today's witness. The witness came with certified, documents authenticating that the WhatsApp messages and everything she's heard with Ousanou Bojang were authenticated and verified to be real WhatsApp conversations. Now, secondly, she had everything put on a flash drive, and as well she presented her phone to the judge to say, here is the phone. They decided to format everything in Ousanou Bojang's phone, but they cannot touch my phone, and everything about this conversation is right here in my phone. And of course, this phone was presented to the court, and of course, the presiding judge had to go through all the messages and realize that from 8 p.m. of that day, this dude was constantly on WhatsApp all the way to midnight. At the same time, how can somebody be so active on WhatsApp doing all those conversations at the same time killing cops? But in terms of understand, Gambia Mansakunda, when you get hold of this dude, you realize that he was so busy on his phone, and you notice that he has nothing whatsoever to do with the case. Why did you format his phone? Don't tell you to put this thing on this dude by all means. That really made me sad. That the police of the Republic of the Gambia, after noticing everything that Ousanou Bojang, even when you captured him, you notice that he is not the right person. You could say we got the wrong person. But deliberately you formatted his phone and did everything you can humanly possibly do to put this whole case on him. Boy, Joe Yaman Tambiwala, Kafir Yaman Tambiwala, Hasid Yaman Tambiwala. There is no level of wickedness that the Gambia police cannot go to. And at some point, honestly, like, I don't give a man. Because the fact of the matter now becomes that you really understood that this dude has nothing to do with the case. After knowing all that, you decided to format his phone thinking that communication is one way. Communication is in two ways, not one way. You can format his phone, but you cannot destroy all the messages that he sent and the messages that he received from the other party. And the other party has presented everything in those conversations to the court today. Ayal to Malokono, ayal to Doyakono, ayal to Joyakono, and exposes your potential complicity in the killing of your own men. So today's witness did not only tell us how brutal, wicked, and evil the Gambia police force is, but she went on to tell us that any person who might have issues in the Gambia, don't expect the police to do justice, because they are the most cruel, barbaric, and evil people in the country. Atole nyom mo jawolu. Gambia police olu nyom mo jawolu. Ila nyaton kolu nyom mo jawolu nena manso da nyimbanko kam. Kambirin Gambia baya wulu nana maje moka mojibe yalon ko to nya kare man nyinge ko hani al nga la kam force nga la telefono ta nga format until somebody had to flee from the UK to come and present her phone to say ntele nin kare be kachala kabirin talan konon for dutala. Where does that leave the police force? Where does that leave the regime? In complete shambles and shame. But before we got to that, we've listened to Mankajang, and you told the Gambian people that if anybody knows any information about the killing of the cops, let them come forward and give relevant information. Mankajang went to Casamance, came back, had an interview with Mama and all of that. You arrested him and put him incommunicado because you wanted to destroy every potential evidence he's got, because you said he was interfering with your witnesses. But at the time, the case was not yet in court. How comes you already had witnesses that people were interfering with? Because you understood that everything Mama said were all fabricated scripts and lies. Because that is the reason why you said Mama's audio is lost. The audio is with people. That is the reason why Mama said she did not receive the money. But the National Audit Report had indicated that Mama Jabi received $1 million from the government of the Gambia, and that bounty was set by the president. Why didn't the president give Mama a bounty from his pocket? But he fraudulently went again and take money from the state coffers and give it to Mama for no good reason. Gambia Mansakunda, Allah ko malo sembo warta mtemte fe bakela. I just cannot digest this. I really cannot digest it. That the government of the people that is meant to serve the people of this country can come all out to frame a young man with his lactating sister who did them no wrong, even after knowing that these people were not involved in this in any way. They deliberately decided to format his phone just to put it on him by all means. Omo joyality, omo hashidiality, omo bata reality. So to have people tell you, no, forget about this, you got to shut up. Look, we cannot. In as much as we try to let it slide, we just cannot, because we cannot look at that level of injustice, cruelty, and criminality and be quiet on it. But the government of Adama Barrow is exposed. Because if not, first let's look at it from chronologically. They said their independent witness actually came to anti-crime at midnight, which is not true, because nobody enters anti-crime through the back gate at midnight. That's already false. Ousanou claimed that they were beating and torturing him to force him to say something he knew nothing about. Just from that point, these people went on to format his phone. The phone that they said they were tracking, DIG, someone that don't track telephone. They can telephone, bisa demut on kasamas. Ngen dem keri jambur, ngen jel telephone ambi, ngen read telephone message, yep, you neka si telephone bi. Ngen gisne wah dega yala. Wah dega fa yala pako bi demut fu incident bi happen, because this guy was so busy on his WhatsApp. What did you people do? You formatted his phone, thinking that, okay, formatting the phone will save you, because yo ibu, so you went through the phone, you realized that depuis 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, this guy was constantly messaging and in constant conversations, that he cannot be doing those conversations at the same time killing cops, because the person who did that is an expert. Alma Fono, Tonya, we got the wrong person. Let's go and look for the real person. But you went on to frame him deliberately and intentionally. So when things like that happen, then there is already high suspicion that the regime knows everything about the killing of the cops, and they did everything in their powers to, put it on this young man. If people did not stand up to make sure that justice is done in this case, what was the intention of the Gambia Police Force? To lie against this dude, to incarcerate him on their lies, and to put him in jail on their lies. When in reality, they know clearly the people that killed the cops. It's been 2 years of constantly talking about this case, which we've got to the end of it, because I believe that Kathleen should be, and of course, in my view, should be the last witness in this case. Yaje, when the case happened, I got all the messages that Ousanou was conversing with Kathleen from Ousanou's brother. I went on to have conversations with Kathleen over and over about things that were happening. A very professional British lady, very conscious and very, very tactful. Very careful about what she says and what exactly the conversations would be around. I've dealt with professionals, but this is a person at a higher level of professionalism. I shared the messages somewhere to say, how could you say this person killed the cops and at the same time he was busy in this conversation? Somebody who claims to be a tech savvy or probably had trained the police on, getting to know what is, doctored messages or whatever, told me, oh no, some of the messages look doctored. Bro, the messages made it to court today. Certified, verified, and of course, phone presented to the judge. When your prosecution had nothing absolutely to say. And it speaks to one thing. They formatted Ousanou Bojang's phone because they know the dude has nothing whatsoever to do with the killing of the cops. But of course, to frame him and to make sure he does not have any evidence to defend himself, they went on to format his phone, not knowing that the communication was in two-way. That somebody somewhere would fly across oceans to get to the Gambia to present that phone and said, here is the phone, here is the certifications of these messages, here is it, and then present the phone right in front of the judge to say, here it is. Look through it and tell me somebody who is not a gun expert, who has never been in any rebellion, who does not work for Brikama Area Council, who has nothing to do with politics, could just go and kill the cops expertly like that, and at the same time is constantly on conversation, sending voice messages and messages at the same time. They said, Gambia police are capable of doing something like this, I would say no. But after this incident, I have the complete belief that Gambia police are capable of anything and everything criminal. And that is exactly what they did in this case. But it's now left to the judge. Because what I would want J. Dabo to do is to go and get that national audit report, present it to the court where Mama's name is explicitly mentioned, and it is said that she received the 1 million bounty. And when she was actually asked in court, she deliberately denied that she did not receive the money. Ama jabi ni mu wulula ta lonko ifana dingol la soto menen tafal tonya la kala bang wiri jaran dare dega rek moy mujé mo moy minke droy kunkam ete wandi dingol la muta yatin na yewol sorom sanji fula wandi bana dingol yara kore wol beke bayoti molla banko ka tra babe balwodo amman kuke mola na fulta amman mola fensunya man sakunda la tapwal ya ni la bandi ya ni la kurya e wande dingol muta ye soron tilimbal ya nan tajinde aka e wande dindol muta ye fayla politiko kan e murunde ka wuliya la dol kan ko wol soron tilimbal ya ni tapwal ya ka foki la telephone la muta ka format ka foko e sama tolla du itata mo fala mi yalon ka man ku singol fongola muna nyim man sakunda nal kam mal wal silata atol be fenne fono la Gambia wala atol be place ni la Gambia ko tenke bara Gambian kolo na bankole be onyama nkomu dina dum kellati barna dino ka dan dalla nim probably ngajimi nga wolin no dro nga to bara tonya mbuka bara wala because ninyi mu tonya bankoti nya bebe tonya nin tilimo nin tapale yalla min bebe kere nyim banko ka sanji fula mo bebe dering ko kuta kering as if they do not know. These are the kind of people that nimmo kudoke they use their pulpits to go and talk shit about other people. E ko tolo mo dina dum kellati lata ala la bara alla nya silongo fong, at some point it's questionable that you cannot tell the truth to the regime that is busy killing people, on top of it framing other people. Will it be to come and say something? That is why when I look at people of my community telling me, oh no, Barrow do got the money. Now Barrow neka president for the next 200 years. Almo doesn't give 2-3 fucks. That's just the fact. Alay along kila along, it does not add or reduce anything to me. But we will defend our people to the letter. And no manta silala mola wala ja. And amange come, you got to be in Gambia or you got to be elsewhere. Man nama fale lulu. You got MPP supporters all over New York. You got government officials coming to New York or whatsoever. Kekende abuka ke dula kilindoni. Na lato kontaka min foto nyate jale min no alu keje. Bare mfutara bito la nena man la ko bimbe futala bito loko albe wulia lala wandi dingo kanan, he will have people to defend him and we will defend him to the letter. And today, honestly, Ousanou would leave that court with his head high up there. That of course, indeed, a koleata nyao nyama. Ye tumiro min lankang ala ya lomake. Moli sodota la mini ya lonko ilota kaje ko tonya nintilungo isabati jankatu. Nte make wali entelo ne yalon ne ko manke mo kurunte manke mo falati. Manke tapale moti. Katu ngalo wala. Ala diamu mansia. Abuka mo tapalea, abuka mo nakari, abuka dum mo kasida, ebuka la problem mo edulato, bara la mansa kunda la kuria na la tapalea na la bandia, ale wandi dingo muta na koto muso mi alonko, ala dena no be doyaring, ali ya dingo leke bayoti, atol na la dimbayal be shiring, batara yaka mo la banko kalko mota kufala woto. And on top of it, you think people are comfortable with their life, they just got to shut up. No, it doesn't work like that. You don't incarcerate our people out of your false narratives and lies and deception and expect everybody to shut up. This is the worst government I've ever seen in this wide world. That the police could actually go to that extent. Kamola telefono. Imagine your prime suspect. Ite kuwala telefono format. Ibu so alama ali edema. Kati itele ni usi na telefono tatakang. Itele na botakang. What we will now conclude that itele telefono in format. Pako. amul dara lu ko fi jar yaga dega rek moy mujjé itanin tol be ñoo jëla ñu banko kan ka ribe fondin ke yare no seen we fondin ke yare sama seen tol be ñoo ñako na jibe la jam kadu ngalo ne hani i ñongol police kunda ni e jibe kalo na ko moro ita manke mo kende jiko tela mo kende da jiko tela so ko adama la masa kunda nyanta boy la kata manke masa kunda kende ti masa kenden tati mo kende jiko tela mo kurungol lamiti tapale lamiti mo falal lamiti andu wala ka wuli ala gambia dingol kanke soron tapale anin tilimbal yakam ñun nam ko sodarinti ku ko wax rek wax nga dega ku ko waxut nak da ngay baña wax dega way ñi xam nañ ne Ousanou Bojang demu fa reyut ben police yi yow nit ko ne yow mo rey police yi yow nga jël téléphone ko diko format luta nga wara format téléphone am bi ngir message yu nekk ci téléphone bi woné na ne pako bi mu ngi doon jëflante ak ñi depuis 8 o'clock ba midnight constantly lolu ngeen bañ pour mu woné lolu ngeen bañ pour ñi xam ko lolu ngeen bëgg andi ay jiko tapalé ay jiko say pour tuumal doomi jaamur ci ludul dega lolu ngeen fi def yena ñu ne boy bi rebel la du dega yena ñu ne boy bi def am ñuko fay xaliss te yeen ben xaliss a jëlu len ko ci mom yena ñu wax ne pako bi Brikama area council la moy liggéey yena ne da ngeen ko fekkon ci UDP court case bi Banjul lolu yépp ay feni kesse em len ci lolu ngeen ñoo di jël téléphone am bi diko format ngir message yu fa nekk bëggu len kenn gis lolu wa yeen bo len démé be xamné pako bi wax dega fa yalla mom demu fa defuko. What is so wrong in telling people that we got the wrong person and then we would basically try to get the right person? Ousanou demal ñibi ngeen ne dédé lolu du fi am du nañ ko tuumal du nañ ko sosal du nañ make sure ñu incarcerate ko and we will make sure we jail him for crimes that he had not committed, and we believe that the police are there to ensure there is accountability, justice and order. The same police that is there to make sure that there is justice and order are the same people that are framing our own innocent citizens and trying to put them in jail for reasons that probably only them knows. Oto Gambia jumala ñanta la police la jumala ñanta kan mo wara gom ne police yi ni dega lañ fi doxal kan mo fi wara am problème sa nga ne damay jog dem police ngir ñu doxal dega ngir ñoñu ñoo nekk ñi ñoo xamantene dañuy jog tuumal ay gor tuumal ay doomi jambur tejlu len ay ñaari at fekk nak ñu tok nak melni dara xewut. DIG Sobe wala kono and the police command filled with criminals and bandits. Oko waxe rek ñu ne like karabu adaga stress bakel. But what is there not to be stressed about when you look at people, innocent people put in jail for reasons that nobody can tell? In this whole country, in this whole wide world, who in his right mind will tell you that Ousanou Bojang killed the cops? Who in his right mind will tell you is reasonably sensible that the police formatted his phone? Who in his right mind will tell you that it made sense for the police to say he is a rebel, he works in the Casamas rebellion, he possessed the weapon from there, he works for Brikama area council, he was at the UDP court case in Banjul, just for all of that in totality to be fabricated scripts by the police? Why would the police lie that much in this case if they are innocent? But why would they even tell us that he wore a combat boot that they picked in his house that did not fit him in court, that actually belongs to his brother? Wale atina DPP borta case lama hani kata kiti odo kodenga kadu malosembo warraka. Bare ya wakawa min to monna silo kan Abubakar wakawa momala min kara momala londo bondi dami bar because almalla gambianol la almalla tonya mol almalla gambianol min yalango, they have the experience, they have the prerequisite knowledge, and of course they have the capacity and the capability to man those key positions in our justice ministry. You will go and pick this samba boy yo xamantene ken xamuñ fuñ joge ngeen jël len jox len place pour ñu defal len lo len buga. It's about doing what the regime wants and not to actually deliver justice in our beloved country. Otto Gambiankol, voting for this regime in 2026 will be the most detrimental, act that Gambians would do. But of course, a lot of people, they don't care about the plight of the Gambian people, including most of the people in the police. All they care about is their pockets. But of course, what really goes into a pocket in the Gambia? Honestly, what? Ni masunya iko ilata munele kejo mindoron na moro wajata mo ikatuli ala wande mol kam fay ko soro batara yan intilimbal yakam. And within these 2 years we've cut ties with a lot of people. I personally don't care. I don't need to make up any ties with anybody. Ma don judo fi ni mbani fa ndamala wulu manga fulandinde mo fulani ndi fa sabu ko ke mo ba mo fulani mo hanen dingol ngamin wulu fa ni ma wulu nyola so ala la ke dro yikete wulu lalti wala min kete defana wulu lalti ala la wala kete wulu lalti bara mo tante mo te nyin dunya anu mo la dunya baluta mo bulu ala ya lon ka bra ko li antol karanta len anu na karamo en na fala fanan anu mbuka malo mola wala tan ko ni NPP ni mo ko tamal jamin ya lon ko they are into this political nonsense and activism and you said you did this bro we did it when we had to do it and we thank God for it. And you see other people in the middle of the case, boy, ana buguloli man mala de wahne dama don wah mbiri police because I wanted a job in the Gambia. Do I look like somebody who wants something like that? Alama ala njowal alama entanka ufamra. That I had nothing to do in life. I got to talk about a police case simply to look for a job in a regime as disgusting as Adama Barros. Ala njodo ko wala alama ala yankan kadi wala ngafam. I am not folks that you actually take to VAR and say ayo yafi wahundi tenga deflenen ala man tankala ala nko ala dan wala ala en tanka wala minka wandi molu fay murun ko tanke wuli ala dol ka yo wala soron tilimbali anin tapale ala ka modo le wuli ko ka fo ko amoro fay mala fi ñin ko mbeda o place sun kan ni wala kera munet ala ya lon kila ya lon ni wala fo jibe mi ya lon ko ko jo min hanin tili sabado ko fo ngamo. Let's just put that aside ko mba obe man amanjara bare min kumada wala nyinti ko Adama Barrow la masa kunda tilimbali yani tajinti ya mi la Ousanou Bojang nala dimbayalu kan wala na tambitale nana ma wala mo kan nyimbanko kan e ami Bojang na dimbayal ke bayol ti dingol be borim na ka bo sate kata sate ka to man tabla so de man ku fengedla ka